And thank you everybody for making the time to come through this evening. My name's Phil Craig. I'm the leader of the Referendum Party, and I'm also the co-founder of a lobby group called the Cape Independence Advocacy Group. And I have a great affinity with people who are struggling, because my life for the last few years has been around political activism. And I thought that today I would just share a couple of very brief thoughts that hopefully can suggest some way forward. Now, the first thing we did as the Referendum Party, obviously, as you can probably, as the name suggests, we're fighting for people to be heard and to have the voices of people in the communities to be able to express themselves. So I think many of you probably took part in the poll, and we organised a brief poll to get people's views. I'm just going to very briefly share. There were only 4 questions. So we circulated a poll. Do you support the city's plans to relocate residents to Massabumbuleli into Fish Hoek, Ocean View and Lochiel smallholdings? 98% of people in the community said no, they didn't support it. 1% said they did support it, and 1% was unsure. The next question was, do you support building a low-cost housing development in Elgin Park, Fish Hoek, next to Bay Primary? 98% of the community said no, 1.3% said they supported it, and 0.8%, I don't know how we got to 0.8, I think 0.7, unsure. Do you believe the Deep South can handle more population growth without harming local services and the environment? 97% said no, it's already overburdened. 1.8% said no, there's plenty of capacity, and 1.2% said they weren't sure. And then the last question was, do you want the City of Cape Town to continue with the spatial development plan? 93% said no, they opposed it. 2% said they supported it, and 5% said they weren't sure. So a pretty resounding expression of community feeling, and you can see it by the fact that people are here sitting in this room and wanting to do something. So just a couple of very, very brief thoughts from my side. First of all, I think all of us want to live in a fair and just society. We recognise that South Africa hasn't always been that. But the first thing that we must all make sure in these situations is that nobody gets bogged down by guilt, because fair and just includes you. You have a right to fair and just treatment. And that's the first thing, because this is an issue that's going to run up against challenges with political correctness, and actually you're going to have to stand up for yourself. The proposal that's on the table from the city is absolutely insane on multiple levels. If they couldn't stop people settling in the wetlands in the first place, if they move them out, how on earth are they going to stop the next set of people coming to settle in again? So first of all, they're not solving the problem, they're just creating a new problem. Then on top of that, the issue with illegal settlements is that they're illegal. And they are rewarding people for illegal conduct by moving them to the front of the housing queue and giving them housing, which is absolutely wrong and unjust and unfair. So there's a real issue here that we as a party, and I'm sure all fair-minded people, absolutely stand behind you. One thing I know from being a really ordinary person who's ended up being probably infamous rather than famous political activist, is that you have far more power than you think you have. But you only have it if you're going to stand up and stand together. We've come out here, Rob made a phone call, said would we come? With pleasure we've come. But actually, everybody's here for their own agenda. Nobody cares. You're very fortunate that David here is the editor of a newspaper with Rob, and he lives in your community, so this issue is personal to him. So you've got a head start. But the only way you're going to fight this is if you stand together, you form an action committee, you coordinate, and you have a strategy. But if you do that, you'll be absolutely amazed by how much power you have. And I say that from personal experience, because I've ended up in situations that, frankly, I never thought were remotely possible. And sometimes just having the chutzpah to stand up and fight and stand together is all that you need. And actually, as a community, you've got 2 tools that you must know you have. Your ratepayers. And if you don't pay your rates, the city doesn't work. So first of all, you have some financial leverage over the city and your voters. and ultimately everybody that represents you ultimately next year is going to be re-elected. So there, when you sit down and you draw up your strategy, they're the two things I think you decide. At the end of the day, we're ratepayers, we're paying for services, we're not paying for people who've broken the law to be rewarded for their conduct at your expense, and you're going to need to think about how you vote. From our perspective, and I'll finish now, we will help in any way that we possibly can. Rob said that we're working on some legislation. It's probably not going to help you much, but we're working on an illegal settlements bill. Housing, ironically, is what's called a concurrent competence, which means that the national parliament can pass legislation, but so can the provincial parliament. So actually, we can pass different legislation in the Western Cape Parliament to effectively stop the proliferation of illegal settlements. It should have been passed long ago. It's an absolute disgrace that it hasn't been passed, but we've written that legislation and we're just making the preparations to have that illegal settlements bill, or the Western Cape illegal settlements bill, tabled in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament.
Isn't this whole move getting all these people for voting rights? I mean, they have a strong voters side and remain powerful as long as they like. Don't you think that's one of the ploys that they're using to get all these people in, and they count them up as voters? They're not going to worry about it.
Well, I think, yeah. Look, so of course it's possible, and I think when I said a moment ago, everybody's got their own agendas. I'm just trying to be honest. We have to understand that this is your agenda that you need to drive and get people to help you. You don't want your agenda to be co-opted. We all understand that there's a national picture at play here, and the issue of illegal settlements and provincial migration and all of the issues that feed into this are political hot potatoes, and undoubtedly if the political powers are allowed to act unhindered, then I think your suggestion in some form is correct, in terms of they'll follow their agenda and you'll just be pawns on the chessboard. That the onus now is on you as a community to organise, to get yourselves a committee and to stand up, and whether that results in a court case, whether that results in some kind of protest action, whether that results in you voting en masse for a different political party, that's choices that you need to make. But you're absolutely right. If you don't become more annoying to the political powers, then their other agenda, then the other agenda is going to win through. Clearly, when they've made this decision, they're not thinking about your best interests, they're thinking about their best interests. But anyway, I wish you all the luck, and if anything we can do to help, I hope that's of some use to you. Obviously, we're going to push through the illegal settlements legislation, which hopefully will have some benefit, but that may be in the longer term. So.
Okay, you can just give a little bit of clarity on the legislation you're busy with and the structure of this, because clearly within our constitutional framework, there is laws that can't contradict each other. So when we look at the PI Act, when you bring legislation out, won't they be contradicting the Constitution and the PI Act?
Okay, so yes, so effectively, the legislation that we bring out effectively is a Western Cape PI Act. But actually, we chose not to call it a PI Act. We chose to call it exactly what it is, an illegal settlements bill. So the PI Act is national legislation, but housing is what's known as a Schedule 4, Schedule 5, which I think is Schedule 4, concurrent competence, which basically means that the national parliament can pass legislation, but so can the provincial parliament. And the challenge with the PI Act is that there's a constitutional right that says nobody may be deprived arbitrarily of their home, and which has come to be read by the Constitutional Court to say that if somebody moves into a piece of land in Massey and they're now living in it, that you have to get a court order to remove them. You can't just go and remove them. And what makes it worse, if they stay there more than 6 months, then they acquire additional rights. But actually it takes 12 months to even get to court. Yeah. So that the day that somebody gets in there, they now have rights, and it's very, very difficult to remove them. what we've done in this piece of legislation, so actually I'm going to be, I try not to sort of be disparaging, but politics is at play. So the PIE Act has an issue. The DA have tabled at a national level an amendment to the PIE Act. They know there's a problem. They tabled it in 2022. It's a private member's bill. It's not going to be passed, but they're trying at a national level. But they have the power to pass that legislation in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. They've had an outright majority for 20 years, but Alan Winde is blocking it, is refusing the bill to be here. This bill was brought to me by somebody from the DA who said, will you please bring the bill, because we can't get our own party to bring this bill. And what this bill does, our bill, is it effectively takes the same framework, but we change the definition of home. Because the Constitution says that nobody may be arbitrarily deprived of their home without a court order, and in our bill we've created a definition of home which is a structure that you occupied, and at the time you occupied it you had the permission of the legal owner of that property. And our argument is quite simple. You cannot have a home on a property that you never owned, you never had a lease over, and you never had any legal right to stay on it in the first place. So that's the essence of that bill.
Thanks so much, Phil. Hi everyone, I'm David Wilkinson. I will try to keep this as quick as possible because I do live